go. Greetings and welcome, everyone. This is Theresa W. Gamble. Excuse me, Dr. Theresa W. Gamble. Some new
Yeah.
updates. I finally finished my graduate school degree, so I am a doctor now, and I'm coming to you relaunching Courageous Conversations with Dr. Theresa W. Gamble, our civic engagement series. And right now, in the current political climate we're in our country, redistricting is a hot topic. So those you may have remembered 4 years ago, I interviewed this beautiful, amazing, dedicated Democrat, Mr. Phillip Miner, who educated and helped me and you to understand what is redistricting and what it looks like here in Jacksonville, Florida, and Duval County. So guess what? We're back at the table again, the virtual table again, so we can get an update with this new administration with all these tons of harmful bills and legislations that's taking place not just at the federal level but also at the state of Florida. So I want to let Mr. Phillip tell you what he's been up to since we had this last interview about redistricting. Welcome back to Courageous Conversations, Mr. Phillip.
Thank you very much. And certainly let me begin with adding my words of congratulations to you for the accomplishment that you've achieved, the additional accomplishment that you have achieved, and that is completing your terminal degree study. So congratulations to you, my good Dr. Theresa V. Wakefield Gamble. I don't think I have to say how proud I am and all of us here in the greater Jacksonville community when people in general, but particularly people of color, and then in your instance, women of color, and most particularly African American women, continue to succeed and reach these accomplishments against very present challenges and roadblocks and anything other that one can say that resembles resistance. For you to persevere and move through that and accomplish the things that you have is just not a small feat. So again, my hat off to you. I bow to you, my queen. Indeed, congratulations.
Thank you,
Um,
sir.
what's been going on? Wow, I'm sorry in many ways that we're having this conversation now because of all of the mid-decade redistricting that's going on. 4 years ago, if you would have said, well, do you think there's ever a chance that realignment might happen earlier than the 10-year cycle? I would have said I would have laughed. And then here we are. And what is it? 6 different states have already done redistricting. And my reading of just a few days ago, I think the count is something like 2 or 3 more decided seats that are red than blue in terms of the redistricting. And then we have other states that are struggling with whether they should do it or not. But I think we're in a sad position as a nation to think that we are tinkering with established procedures and practices that I think overall, as a construct, has served us well. I do think that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have each had their moments when I think they may have gone perhaps a little further than one might be comfortable with in redrawing lines. But the bottom line is that I think there was more balance than not
Mhm.
in the past. And this mid-decade movement that we see now, all orchestrated and initiated by Trump in the White House, I find very perilous and dangerous. But if I may kind of go to the end of all of this, and then we'll still deal with a lot of in the middle. I think that given the discontent that a number of Republicans are having with this Trump administration, and certainly the disaffected numbers of independents, or as we say here in Florida, the NPAs, the no party affiliates or non-politically aligned, whichever definition you want, with that number having just exploded against the Trump administration, and I dare say, and appropriately so, the Republican Party. Um,
Right.
I think enough of these new districts, and I'll just use the state of Texas. I think enough of the new districts in Texas and other parts of the country that they felt they were making safer for red are going to indeed be blue. So I think it's going to backfire on Republicans, not necessarily because Democrats are so great and wonderful, although that's my party, and I'm going to die a Democrat. That's just how I am. But I
Right.
think it's more a matter of discontent with the Republican Party that's not going to serve them well in the midterms. But even when I look at what happened here,
Uh-huh.
I think I may have said 4 years ago that I was concerned that while we were kind of nibbling at one another's ankles about what's happening with 7, 8, 9, and 10 and moving 2,000 more Republicans into this district and all and
Right.
da 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 da. I really didn't see what the big issue was because those districts were going to wind up equally as safe as they've always been. But what we did see happen, or at least what I have seen happen,
Right.
is that a number of the vulnerable red districts are simply not as vulnerable now as they were before. And two examples I'd like to revisit real quickly.
Okay.
City Council districts 4 and 5. If I remember my numbers correctly, District 4 had only roughly 300 some more registered Republicans than Democrats, and District 5 had something like 507 more. Well,
Right.
when you look at the numbers from the most recent demographic breakdown, and as you know, our supervisor of election office, they run their demographic report showing, the numbers of registered voters in all of our voting districts, the congressional district, state rep districts, all of that stuff,
Right.
U.S. districts. They show us that breakdown. Well, I looked at that, and it was the report that was run on February 2, so it was as of the end of January of this year.
Okay.
Well, City Council District 4 went from roughly 300 more Republicans to now 3,061. So what
Wow.
what what was I would argue a reasonably easy district to flip is much more difficult now. And even then, if you were to add the Democrats with just the black and brown NPAs in 4 and 5, they had a numerical advantage over the Republicans. And so we could have flipped those with the right candidate. District 5, 507 more Republicans then, and now 3,085. So we're
Wow.
over here worrying about, whether we're going to have 28 or 20 or 29,000 Democrats in a district on the west side of the river. And, and we lost the ability to more easily flip
Wow.
to quote unquote red districts to blue. So I'm not happy with that outcome. And I am very concerned on this day,
Mm-hmm.
the 20th of February of 2026, that if come next year,
Right.
if we Democrats and others don't get at least 10 seats on city council, which is what's needed for control, then
Right.
come 2031, when the redistricting happens again on the typical schedule, I fear that the Republicans will finish the job that they started 4 years ago and really very, very much protect the red districts. And at worst case scenario, it would be, we would have maybe 6, they'd have 8. And I'm sorry, that's just not good. That's not good. So
Exactly. So
so
let me hop in.
redistricting continues to be a real
A bit.
challenge.
I currently agree with you. So let me ask you this. With the total increase of Republicans in those specific districts, is it due to DeSantis touting that Florida was a free state and a lot of snowbirds or people out on the West Coast moved to Florida to increase or inflate those registered Republicans in our area?
No, I really think it was more a matter of, as you might recall, the mandate was that they wanted to have a median number of registered voters in each of the 14 districts, and District 11 was by far the worst of the bunch. They had to jettison, I think it was 16,000 voters or whatever. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the map,
Mm-hmm.
11 is surrounded by to the north districts 4, 5, and then to the west 6, and to the East 13, all
Got it.
of which
Mm-hmm.
all of which are Republicans. So all they did was just move the necessary numbers out of 11 into 4, 5, 6, and 13.
Wow.
Now, in some of the moves, it did increase the number of registered voters, like in District 2,
Mm-hmm.
which is north of 4 and 5, but but in District 2, they were able to move a few of those over into the old 7. But it left District 2 still very much red, and it didn't hurt District 7. I mean, I think they got 2,000 or so more, or something or other, more Republicans. But, ask me if I'm worried about a 2,000 head count increase in District 7 when they had, what was it, 26,000 Democrats anyway. They could go way up on Republicans and still not have to worry about control, even with the turnout not being anywhere close to what it needs to be on the part of Democrats. So bottom line is the Republicans made out like a fat rat in a cheese factory with no cats allowed signs posted everywhere. Okay, so once again, we have to become a little more strategic, not a little, a lot more strategic as a
Correct.
party in where we put our energies. Because again, we must get control of city council next year, or the redistricting in 2031 will again be led by Republicans, and by then I think there'll be even more gutting of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and who knows what will be allowed by then. Uh,
Exactly. I put it like this. We don't want to relive another Axe Handle Sunday. I put it like that
there
because
you go. There you go.
this culture will potentially trigger that, and the next generation will have to go through something that you and many others in our community have fought so hard to not go back to that space. So you mentioned about city council seats, you mentioned about candidates, and I know you have also worked with, identifying, potential candidates to run at the local, state, and possible federal level. So with redistricting on the playbook, should redistricting be at least incorporated in some of their messaging, or is that something for the party clubs and caucuses to emphasize more?
I think it's a both and. I think it's absolutely a both and. But on the issue of the candidates, I certainly feel that it would be appropriate, and from my view, my personal view, it's a requisite for them to be speaking to that, because again, the difference between, as I see it, our parties and how we function. I often say that Democrats play checkers, which is the next move, while Republicans play chess, which is the sixth move down the board. Or like Wayne Gretzky, or however you say his name, that great hockey skater. I remember once watching an interview of him. I'm not a hockey fan necessarily, but he was so phenomenal. Anyway, when he was asked, "What's your secret to success?" You know what he said? He
Mm,
said, "I skate to where the puck will be, not to where the puck is."
that's
And
good.
I believe that that's what Republicans do. They think long term. Let's just use my lifetime. I'm 75 years old, right? So I've
Hmm.
been around a minute and have voted in every election since I was 18. Well, there's never been a time in this country in my voting history when Democrats were outnumbered nationally. But
Mm,
how in the heck did the vast majority of our state legislatures, our state governorships, and in many instances, our city councils and county commissions and school boards become so Republican dominant? Because they plan ahead and
right.
they understand a basic tenet. You cannot govern if you don't win and win control.
That's
And
good.
that's what they've done. And they patiently waited us out. I lived through the 40 years of Democratic control in the U.S. House, Tip O'Neill and company and stuff. But the Republicans were planning all along for that eventuality when they
Hmm.
would take control, and they knew that when we do, we got to act like that's our only shot at making the changes we want, and they have done that superlatively. But I digress. Yes, I think redistricting needs to be top of mind of our candidates, because they can build into their argument for election the need for us to have control now and to maintain it because of the checker playing approach. But to lay that predicate now, they'll be able to go back to, remember, I told you, it's not about me just winning now. I got to be now because of later. And we want to stay off what's going to happen. People are thinking 2031, my gosh, that's so far away. Well, that's the point. If
Hmm.
you don't plan for what you're going to do in 2031, then anything is possible.
That's
Anything is
true.
possible, including nothing of what you ultimately want if you don't plan for it. That's why you plan. You don't
That's true.
plan for yesterday. You plan for tomorrow,
That
right?
part, that
You
part.
plan for
So
tomorrow.
that's true. And that's something where I, had a witness here in Duval County, Jacksonville, some of the reactive mindset. They struggle being proactive. And too many folks wants to be the chief instead of rotating the chief leadership for those who have the expertise for the particular problem we facing right now. So,
For you younger folks, we keep expecting you to step up and take your place. And I've said to my old colleagues, and I'm one of them, mind you,
mhm,
they can't step up until we step over.
exactly that
You know
part.
what?
That
Step
part.
aside.
Hmm.
Step aside. Quit insisting that they do something that we don't allow them to do. I don't understand that. Well, I do understand it. I resent it and I reject it.
Right. And I appreciate you saying that. And that's what I was telling another colleague of mine. We have to bring the young people along with us and teach us. It's like on the job training. This civic engagement is not something you just fall into, you stumble into. You have to get the on the job training. And that's why I tell people they need to respect individuals like yourself and others that I have met and embraced and loved in Jacksonville, like yourself, Miss Ingrid Montgomery, Mr. Joseph Maceo, Miss Velma Roundsville. You all have been in the trenches for a while and you embrace the young generation and willing to train them. It's a lot of clubs and caucuses, excuse me, and certain leaders, they don't want to engage at all, especially if you think differently from them or you do something different from them. So, how do we embrace, engage our next generation of civic engagement leaders now instead of later? Or either we wind up losing them altogether.
Well, I think one part of that challenge is identifying where they are, because the average one of us that are over 65, I think we'd be hard pressed to rattle off where the young folk that we want to see do more even hang out. If they're not our kids, and then some of us may not as aware of where our own kids are for that matter. But we have to find out where they are and then go there.
Mhm.
Sometimes we as older generation folk, we forget that it is no further a distance for us to go to them than it is for them to come to us.
That's true.
You see.
That's
And
good.
so and so we have to do that. I was at a fundraiser for L.J. Holloway the other night, candidate for U.S. Congressional District 4, and uh, and it was at Illusions, now it happened to be a place that was closed on Tuesday so that the event could happen. But my understanding from chatting with the ownership staff there that they have a young crowd. Well, guess what? I was comfortable. Now maybe I was comfortable there because there were a lot of other folks my age at the fundraiser. I don't know, but I'm going to go back, and I really will, and I'm hopeful that that younger demographic that I understand frequents there will be, if you will, open to some conversations that I would love to have with them, and not preaching and dictating, but listening and trying to elicit from them what their needs are. Because there's a difference between me saying, "Sit down and listen to what I'm telling you about what you need,"
That
and
part.
let us sit down together and let me listen to what you say you need,
That's
what you
good.
say your challenge is with XYZ. And I don't often ask them, why don't you vote? I'm less concerned about why they don't and more concerned with, tell me what it will take for you to vote. Because
That's
the answer
good.
to those questions are very different. And I would rather spend the limited time I have left on earth trying to make happen what they tell me they need to see in order for them to feel comfortable in voting than for me to hear why they didn't. Because they might just say, well, because, too many old Democrats never give me any time. Well, I'm not sure
Wow.
I can easily convince enough old Democrats to give them time. But if they were to say to me,
Hmm.
I don't have a car and I have to take two buses, so one transfer to get to work, and I have to be at work right about the time the polls open, and often I got to work late to just make that extra money, and I don't get off until after the polls close. So the issue is transportation and time away from work. I can work that. Why wouldn't we contact the 10 largest employers in Duval County and try and strike a deal that says on the T days during the week, Tuesday and Thursday during early vote, those 2 weeks, you won't expect your employees to be in any earlier than 10 o'clock if they come in with an I voted sticker, or those who work that shift where they can't get off in time to go vote,
Mhm.
give them the last 2 hours of their shift off so they can go vote on the back end and then bring their I voted sticker in the next morning. We ought to be able to strike a deal with the top 10 employers. And how about we strike a deal with the Jacksonville Transit Authority, JTA,
Mhm.
uh, to work out something where there can be a reduced fare or no fare within different rider zones and all this kind of a stuff. And now that will not only impact the young person who said that, but the older individuals who don't have a car. And more often than not, at least in this country, the working individuals at the lower end of the income scale typically don't live near where they work. They
Correct.
have to get from home to work, and generally it's public transportation, and that is more often than not problematic, and it works
Yeah.
against the ability to easily build in your travel route to get to the polls before or after work. So let's help with that, but it's a different strategy. If you ask them, what will it take for you to vote? I want to work on what it will take to get them to the polls as opposed to understanding why they didn't go.
I like that. I like that method, Mr. Phillip. And it's amazing you brought up the voting piece because we know the United States House of Representatives, they passed the SAVE Act where they
Yeah.
requiring all this citizenship documentation for us to actually vote at the polls. And with that being said, with the with our community members disengaged with voting or even the civic engagement process, what how does redistricting couples with this SAVE Act? Because whatever they do in Congress and it doesn't go through, is for some reason Florida think it's their responsibility to create the blueprint to make it happen, what can't get done in DC. How can we prepare and educate along with redistricting changes with this SAVE Act so we stay ready and not trying to scramble to get ready?
One of the things is the educational piece, helping people understand the specifics of it. And you've probably seen on the various social media platforms, there's a thing that's out there that looks like, well, I think you posted it. I think wasn't
Hmm.
it you that looks like
Yeah.
postage stamps? Or I'm sorry, I try to stay on top of as much as I can. But I got to say, someone posted this wonderful. That was
Yeah,
you.
that was
But
me. Hmm.
but just keeping those kinds of things in front of folk, and that visual is will work more in drawing attention from younger people,
Hmm.
um, than some of the long tirades that some of us older folks think need to happen in terms of the lecture form. Sit down and listen to me.
Hmm.
The educational piece, we have to increase the awareness of the specifics or the negative impact that these things have on folks, because our young people have the absolute ability to understand what's working against them. They're not without knowledge or the ability to understand. It's just a matter of getting that information to them. And then the next piece of that is we got to get it out on the platforms where they are. And now that's a hard one for me because of the technology piece, because I now have two Instagram accounts. I don't know how the first one got started. And I thought I was updating it, but I see that no, I have created a second one. I don't know how to merge. But I mean, so much for me trying. But now I do have two Instagram accounts. But anyway, and if you ask me, go to it right now, Phil, I have no clue how to go to them. I have no clue. I stumble on them every time I wind up, I stumble on them. But some other people know how to work that. And that we have to go to those mediums. I understand from some young friends, well, actually, it's another person my age who is really committed to trying to better understand that younger demographic. He is so on top of the African American male TikTok podcast gurus.
Hmm.
Now, they don't make him feel very comfortable because some of his ideas are just not flying with him, but he's in the mix.
Right.
He's in the mix where they are, and he is going to be sending me the names of some. We got to find out where those places are, find the right people who can take the right messages or create that dialogue that we need to have so that we can begin to educate one another on things, because once we can share some information about what's going on, they're going to have their own perspectives on it. And let's strategize together on how we can work strategies, tactics, and other actions that can mitigate the negatives and enhance the positives as we see it. And I think that we can do that. Now, I dare say that the other piece of that is the mighty, mighty reach of the Black church.
Yes.
We must get back to the days even before Martin Luther King, but certainly he galvanized it. There was no such thing as a red line between the Black church and political engagement. And what I
Yes.
say to pastors who want to talk about the separation of church and state, I say, you show me a Black pastor that thinks that there's supposed to be a separation, and I'll show you a Black pastor who does not understand Black church history in this
Mm.
country.
Yes.
That's where it was. And so, regardless to whether it ought to be or not, that is a place where so many of us are. We must take better advantage of that. And there's plenty of legal room
Mhm.
for voter education in the church. That's not a partisan activity.
Yes,
It's
sir.
not. And so explaining bills and their impact and how we can work against the negative impact, which for me always boils down to who you vote for. It's going
Correct.
to, I can't, I don't know of anything that I'm not happy about that isn't linked to some set of someones who are making those decisions that I have an opportunity to vote for or against. And so we got to make that link between you want change in your life, then it's a matter of who your elected officials are and whether or not they're doing what you want. And if they aren't, then you need to work to bring about that change. And if I may, good doctor, I am so tired of listening to Democrats talk about what our underrepresented Democratic elected officials aren't doing more than they're talking about defeating the Republicans who have created the challenges that we are unhappy with and are expecting our Democrats to be bolder. Well, we
Mhm.
need to have more of our Democrats. I'm not saying that you can't be bold until you're in control necessarily, but we do have to understand the 1-2 of this doggone thing. We to be bold and in the minority gets you bold minority vocalization, but
That
not the
part.
kind of structural change that you need and you deserve. So let's not continue to be mad because Bernie Sanders wants universal health care and wasn't excited about the Affordable Care Act. But guess what? While we're worrying about which one of those ought to happen in terms of our banner as a party rather, look what the Republicans have done. The subsidies for the ACA, which was better than nothing, are gone.
Right. That's
So
true.
we're in here still trying to talk about, well, how come this, but no, the issue is we got to vote out those people who are creating the policies that we are arguing about how to fix within our party. No, get rid of it's like a cancer or another disease. Yes, your behavior contributed to it, but we're going to eliminate the disease and work on aggressively changing our behavior. It's not an either or proposition, my good doctor. It is a both and the Democratic Party needs to hurry up and understand that. We don't get control by eliminating Democrats out of the formula. We need to
That's true.
increase their numbers. And then, and I'm talking at the state house and local and all of that, because the redrawing of the lines in redistricting, that's what sets who gets elected. And then in a state like ours, when you have such a lopsided state legislature, Republicans versus Democrats, they can draw the lines any way they want. And so we must understand the power and impact of redistricting so that we attack that problem at its root. We must elect more Democrats, let's just use our state, where we can and when we can, so that come time, whether it's mid decade or not, for redrawing lines that we have a fighting chance to make sure we preserve them. But I must say this, but even when they draw lines that we don't like, it's still going to boil down to who goes to vote. And I will use you as Congressional District 4. Ask me if I was bothered with the way it looked when Corrine Brown was in it, that north to south, and then they made it
Uh-huh.
east to west. But we still had enough doggone numbers and we were winning. All right. So what that Ron DeSantis draws lines that made it half of Duval and all of Nassau and Clay. He did that, and yes, the state legislature rubber stamped it. But guess what? 2 cycles ago, LJ Holloway lost by 33,000 votes, but 75,000 Democrats in Duval County alone did not vote. Now, do the math,
Wow.
doctor.
Yes.
75 is more than 33, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
You
it
know,
is.
we could have won in that district that we have complained about Ron DeSantis drawing. He drew the boundaries, but we didn't vote. I'm
Exactly.
sorry. We got to own our stuff and govern ourselves accordingly with regard to correction. We
Yes.
must do that. And Duval is the county that can make the difference because in Nassau and Clay, it's just pitiful. There are more registered Republicans in Clay County than all the other registered voters combined. So if 100% of all of them vote and they vote essentially party, even if the NPAs voted with Democrats, they're going to lose in Clay.
Wow.
They're going to lose. But Clay County turnout for Democrats puts ours to shame every election.
Of course it
Those onesie
does.
twosie Democrats over there with 30 some thousand Democrats, and then in Nassau there's only 15,000. We have more registered Hispanic Democrats in Duval County than all the registered Democrats in Nassau, but they turn out, and we
Hmm.
don't. LJ lost because of Democrats in Duval County not turning out to vote.
Wow.
Oh, well, the message needs to be stronger. I would love to have the best messaging and all of that stuff. But when the numbers say that if you just go and vote, you'll win, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to entertain. Well, I don't like the fact that, well, she wears red too much. Or, gee, well, how come she had to, wear jeans at that? Whatever the rap is. Okay. Nothing to do with the fact that if you want change, you must eliminate the people creating the challenges that you're facing, and you got to replace them with folk. And again, my last point on this is, and if we can regain control of some of these chambers, I don't have any fear that we as a party will make sure that our elected officials do what we want, because Democrats have never been afraid to beat up Democrats. We're afraid of Republicans. The average Democrat in Duval County doesn't even know where Aaron Bean's office is. Okay.
Exactly, exactly.
Hello.
It's so relevant you bring this up because some of the things that some voters focus on is someone's appearance, what color they're wearing. They worry about the aesthetics of the
Yes.
candidate instead of the quality, the expertise that they bring. And that's why I say all the time, and when I ran in 2024, I was not going to be worrying about somebody physical characteristics of policing their behavior. Let's look at their job performance and their voting record or their attendance of showing up to work to vote and serve the people. And that is what we need to be focusing on in candidates and elected officials that's seeking re-election. So
Absolutely.
and until we
Absolutely.
can get that, then that way we can get those qualified candidates that we need in office to get that control. Now, there's
Mhm.
a redistricting potential map that's been floating around for Florida where they want to make the whole state red and a little small, about two counties down south blue. So what have you heard since that map been floating around? And I know I've been seeing Representative Anna Escamani sharing a lot of updates on what's going on with that redistricting piece. What do we need to be doing and what do we need to be saying as advocates, as candidates, as elected officials, clubs, caucuses? What do we need to be doing now to make sure this proposed redistricting map for Florida going straight all red not come to fruition?
Again, I think it is linked to, yes, knowing your own individual district and being prepared to vote blue within it, but build that coalition with all of our other uh, uh, districts. Let's just use Duval County. We have 6 state house seats that touch our county.
Hmm.
It ain't enough for us to just focus on the one that you ran in and the other. And I always get those numbers mixed up, 13 and 14, if I'm not mistaken.
It's
Um,
14, yes.
yeah, so the two that currently have Democrat representation are 13 and 14, but we have 4 others. We have 4 others, so we cannot just work in our silo. We need to look at least all 6 of those that touch our county. But what I'm trying to do in my role with the Democratic Women's Club of Florida, I am the region chair for Region 5, which encompasses Duval, Nassau, Clay, St. John and Putnam counties. Well, as you know, Duval, Nassau, and Clay share U.S. Congressional District 4. Putnam shares some things with Clay and Alachua and stuff. So I've asked my persisters, let's be comprehensive in what we do. So we can all do phone banks and same time, maybe different places, but
Mm-hmm.
we're calling the people in our respective areas, but we're essentially bringing the same message. Yes, we want people to sign up for vote by mail. It's a little, you don't have to worry about showing your doggone birth certificate if you've gotten your vote by mail ballot, you fill out and send it in. But collective, coordinated approach to getting information out, whether it's who's running, whether it's the merits of candidate X, whether it's a vote by mail, whether it's go to early vote, whatever it is. But we can, if you will, leverage our work, because it's not enough for the Democrats in Duval to only be calling Democrats in Duval and others to help get Congressional District 4 and 5 people over the hump. We need people in Northeast Florida understanding that what happens here affects all of us. So we need all of the state house representative districts that touch these 5 counties working collaboratively. So the best that we can do is maybe increase our Democratic representation. I think the best shot is probably here in Duval, because we have so many, because around the edges we can pick up stuff if the other counties are working as intentionally as we are. So know your game plan for, yes, your district, but you're connecting one so that now it's a network of counties that touch a larger number of state seats that we have a shot at winning. But this is the real piece. Even because we're so red up here in Northeast Florida, we might not pick up many state house seats in terms of Democrats. But if we drive up the Democratic turnout, hear me now, sister,
Yeah.
guess what? Angie Nixon gets a few more votes for U.S. Senate. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
whomever, Jolly or Jerry Demings gets a few more votes for governor.
Right.
All of that, because we are coordinated in our effort to turn out our vote, not only within party, but in sympathizers and other parties, whether it's the Republicans or the large group of NPAs who have been in our area breaking for the Democrats quite wonderfully in the last 2 cycles of elections here. As you know, Donna won by 9,000 votes, but Democrats were outvoted by Republicans to the tune of 7,000. So
Wow.
who helped Donna win? I'm not arguing that if we would have voted less, it would have been harder for her. But if she wins by 9,000 and we got outvoted by 7, she could have lost 7,000 more votes and still had 2,000 votes extra over the win.
Yeah.
So it's because we're getting the support from NPAs, at least here. Let's mine that. And
Right.
not just in Duval, but we can take that to our surrounding counties, and they can then not just try to drive out their tried and true Democrats, which turn out beautifully in all of our surrounding counties better than we do, but if they can get those NPAs to go with them, that will maybe even eke out a win on a school board or a commission seat. But it's certainly going to increase the number of people who have an opportunity to vote for our statewide candidates. So it's all a part of collaborating and being strategically aligned so that we do not duplicate our efforts, or if it's duplication within a definite strategy to leverage, you see, because
Right.
again, everybody's calling, so that is duplicative, I guess. But the point is, we have a plan, because you don't have to call the people in this area, because we're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to call, maybe it's voters by age, and that's what DWIN tries to do. And the
Right.
senior caucus, Democratic senior caucus, we tell people we're going to deal with the 56 and above, and particularly African American women. And why? Because they're the most dedicated voters. So if we can incrementally increase that, that'd be good. But we want to work with the young Dems, because they're going to be focusing on that young area. So we don't need to call the young women if we're in the senior caucus. We don't, or even in Democratic women. If the JYD is going to do it, let them do that. We're going to focus on then what, 45 to 64 or whatever. But
Right.
coordinate that so that we leverage our efforts and not duplicate, because that's when the win numbers go up, is because we're coordinating and collaborating with a county, an area-wide strategy for the win. let
That's
alone a state. Now, I'm not speaking against the state one, but I just use that as an example just here in Northeast Florida. But that can be replicated
of course.
across the state. One last example of that:
Hmm.
when the Florida Democratic Party changed their system of the state executive committee, it used to just be two, a state committee man, a state committee woman for each of the counties. They changed it to a proportionate number and da 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 da. So now there's 400 of us who are state committee people. Well,
That's
in
good.
Duval County, we were eligible for 18, right?
Hmm.
Well, interestingly enough, the first 18 of us who were selected, 10 of us were members of the Democratic Women's Information Network. 10 of us.
Wow.
And two of the 10 were men.
Mm.
So no, I'm sorry, three were men, so seven women. Anyway, what did I do? I called the president of the Democratic Women's Club of Florida and said, all right, we have 10 of the 18 state committee persons in Duval who are DWCF members, Democratic Women's Club of Florida. How many do we have statewide? Take
Hmm.
inventory, because
Exactly.
we need to coordinate however many of us there are, so that when we move to that January 29th meeting, we will be in lockstep in terms of who we want to elect to the DNC. Okay?
Exactly.
I said,
Exactly.
so I can deliver 10 votes from over here in Duval and maybe even convince my other nine, no, eight to get whatever it is. Yeah, 18,
Uh-huh.
whatever. I'm not good on math, I guess, not this morning. But the point is, we had 52 statewide.
That's
We
good.
called a Zoom meeting and led the discussion about, can we try and get some unanimity on who or out of all the people who put their hat in the ring to be running for FDP chair and the vice chair and all this stuff, who are we looking at wanting to support? And we were able to come together in some general agreement. You can't collude, but we saw all of the names, and the way we tried to come at it to not be inappropriate and move illegally. Um, are we comfortable with this pool, large
Mhm.
pool? Sure. And I can tell you something like 75% of the doggone people who ultimately got selected to be on the DNC were on that list that the 52 of us statewide thought could be okay.
Wow.
And three of the four people who wound up in the senior officer positions for the Florida Democratic Party were on our okay list. That's the power of coordinating your efforts and your work. And then we work the room, too. Now, we had some young folk in our delegation here. And so it was for the young folks to go and talk to other young folk about what we think might work,
Right.
here in Duval. And the Duval piece was essential to
Hmm.
building the consensus that DWCF ultimately did. So those kinds of intentional, collaborative efforts need to be done, because you're educating yourselves on so many other things in the mix at the
Yep.
same time. But the
Yep.
strategy for what we're going to do,
Hmm.
because as Michelle Obama so eloquently says, do something,
Exactly.
do something.
Exactly.
And so
My
it's for us to then define that something.
something. I love that. So now, California Prop 50, Gavin Newsom,
Mm-hmm.
the forever President Obama, they came together and they did this redistricting map for California. Could they blueprint work in Florida?
I think it can. The sad news is that Republicans look at that too. Okay, and whether we like it or not, Republicans seem to operationalize their plans a little quicker than we do. But the short answer to your question, my good doctor, is yes. Um, uh, it can, it can. But I really want to go back to that. The really basic thing for me is, as an individual Democratic voter, I
Right.
don't vote Democratic because I like my state chair or my national party chair, or because whatever. I vote because when I look at what I see as our principles and values, they're the right ones. We may not always have the right person in position X, but
Hmm.
the values are the right ones. And more importantly, the other side, their values are not. And so I got to go to the polls. And guess what? I'm only responsible for getting myself to the polls. So
Mhm.
if the 230,000 plus registered Democrats in Duval County each committed to getting themselves to the polls, we'd win every doggone time in terms of countywide races. That has very little to do with who the leadership is. It has everything to do with where we are as individuals and understanding the value and the rightness, meaning the correctness of our set of values. I'm not concerned that there are some people in my party that don't agree with me on everything. That's not a big issue for me. I know what I believe in, and I know that my party has a better set of them. So regardless of who's at the helm, regardless to whether or not the policy goes as far as I want it to, or goes too far or not far enough, I'm going to vote party because I understand the basic premise that you can't govern unless you win and win control. That doesn't change regardless to how I feel about who's my leader, or who's my senator or
Mhm.
any of that, because I can change who those folks are if I convince enough other people to vote with me. That's
I,
just how I look at that.
I
And
like it.
and I just do. And what would happen if all of us said, I'm going to commit to get myself to the polls? We'd have 100% turnout. They can't beat us. In this county, I moved here full time in '08. There has never been an at-large city council person, and for your viewers, they know that there are 5 of our 19 city council people are voted at large, meaning countywide. There's never been an at-large candidate who's won, Democrat or Republican, with more votes than the total number of registered Black Democrats in Duval County. Now,
Wow.
that translates to me accordingly. That means if we as Black Democrats got behind one candidate, if we could get a candidate to run, but
Mhm.
if we got behind one candidate in each of those at large races and voted for him or her, we'd have all 5 of those. Then, if we add that 5 to the current councilmatic districts that we have, which is 5, what does that give us? 5 plus 5 is what, good doctor?
10, 10,
Indeed.
10.
And 10 is what we need for control. And
Yes.
then, watch this now. If District 1, where I live, should get back on the saddle and reflip that seat,
Mhm.
we would then have 11.
Wow.
And that gives us the ability for us to have one quote unquote non-conforming member. We could
Mhm.
still afford to lose him or her and still have control.
Wow.
You see,
That's
that's just
amazing.
if we just commit to getting ourselves to the polls. Now, I want people to try to get other folks, but I need you to get yourself to the poll.
Right. Take care of
You know,
your vote first and then
right.
bring somebody
And
else
then
along
bring
with
someone else,
you.
because I would argue that I think it's a little easier for you to get yourself to the polls than it is to get somebody else. Now, I don't know. That might not be the case for everybody, but I would argue that I think that's a reasonable proposition. So this is what I've always said and tried to say with different groups I've been a part of. 100% of your household has to vote,
That's true.
and 80% of every group or entity that you're connected with. That's whether it's your sorority sisters, fraternity brothers, whether it's your church members, whether it's your book club, whether it's your drinking club,
That's
whether it's I
good.
can't tell my spouse or my partner where I am club. I don't care what it is, but 80% of everything else you are connected
Me
to,
too.
you help to turn that vote out. And if you ask my family, they know when it's an election year, because when they get to the family reunion at that last Wednesday in July during an election year, in the dog in the doggone hospitality room, baby, it may not be in there when they first get there, but baby, when we finish that tour on Thursdays, when they roll into there, baby, it's convention center, because the literature on every Democrat that they need to know about is on the tables. You can't find the candy for the doggone literature that I put out, because my family knows I need you to vote.
That's good.
I need you
That's
to vote.
good.
And so the deal is, if Philip asks you, did you vote? You better lie to him. You better lie, because if you didn't vote, you better lie, because you're in trouble.
Yes,
You are in
sir.
trouble.
I
Okay.
love that.
So anyway,
I love how this is why I wanted to have this conversation because I was watching the climate and then when I saw the redistricting maps coming back up and your podcast from 4 years ago, YouTube picks it up when we're dealing with some type of election. I said, okay, I need to get Dr. Phillip back on and we can talk about, some of the things he predicted and mentioned back then. We didn't think it would be possible to this day. That's why we cannot assume that civic engagement is going to stay universal, the same all the time, especially
Right.
in political parties. It is constantly
You're right.
changing.
You are totally correct. And that's the constant is change.
Hmm.
And the party that is not equipped to or sufficiently nimble sufficient to make the changes with the change is the party that will be forever stuck in the minority status. And we have to be mindful of that. We just do. But I think that there is great hope, because I know we're probably moving pretty close to the end of the time here. I think there is clearly hope that Prop 50 is something that I think is a reasonable plan. And again, enough other red states seem to find it so. But it really is about operationalizing things. But I do want to say I'm not angry with the head of the Senate in Maryland, that is working against Wes Moore in eliminating that last red seat there. I can understand people standing on what they believe is principle, and I think there's a lot to it. I think Indiana, Republican, red state, they too said we're not going to play that game because it really isn't a good one. I don't think. I think the way the old system, waiting at the decades, I think that's reasonable. It gives people and parties a little more time to build the awareness and hopefully the support for things the way it ought to be. It ought to be a deliberative process. But so many shenanigans are going on. I can understand um, people reacting the way they are. And actually, because of the way Trump, led this stuff with Texas, it really was just a clear affront to democracy. So it seems to me reasonable that people would want to try and match fire with fire and all of that. And it does seem to have fired up a number of Democrats feeling, oh my God, at least we're standing up. And I think that standing up and being more bold is requisite. But once again, it's about the 1-2 of it. And I would much prefer we spend more time in defeating Republicans than trying to beat up the undergunned and undernumbered Democrats in various chambers. We can do both, but we have to work to eliminate the cancer and work aggressively on the behavioral changes. At least we got to do them in tandem, but we got to eradicate the disease. And I'm sorry, the enemy in this is not another Democrat. It is
Hmm.
not. The enemy is a misdirected Republican Party. And I say the party because there are individuals in there who are very unhappy. There are. But nonetheless, the party is not doing right things. It is not. And so people have to understand that. That's job one, is to decrease the number of them, which would necessarily mean that we're increasing the number of us. And if it's a not bold enough Democrat that gets in, once again, I'm not concerned about that because we will whip him or her into shape because that's what we do. The bruises on our Democratic elected officials have been inflicted by Democrats.
Yeah, I agree.
Enough of the time. Enough of the time.
Agree.
I'm not saying that Republicans aren't doing bad things because they are. That's a given. I stipulate that. But we don't need to compound the bad circumstances or contexts that our elected officials are working in. I look at my own state legislature. I mean, we were just over there, a number of us, D1, 150, not D1, all of the Democratic women, 150 of us were over there for 3 days. It's sad to see what our people are up against. But if more people could go and watch our Democrats get mistreated, disabused, disrespected, and then clearly outvoted, I think we would think twice before we would say many negative things about the majority of them. Now, some of them, and you and I know who some of them are, deserve
Hmm.
some of the things that are said about them because of what they are doing or not doing. I think that's fair to say. But the
Right.
vast majority are working hard under absolutely dismal circumstances, and we don't need to add to their burden. We
And
don't need to,
stress. I agree.
yeah, we need to add to their numbers. That's
Exactly.
what we need to do. Because what is it? 85 Republicans in the House and 33 Democrats and 3 vacant seats. Even if we got the 3 vacant seats, that's only 36 to 85. What can you really do with that? And you're going to beat up somebody who can't do something? I'm sorry. That's like kicking a person whose hands and feet are tied. I mean, it's not fair. We got to understand that reality. So let's increase the number of Democrats so that we have a fighting chance to bring forward legislation that can pass and or enough to block bad legislation before it passes. But it's still a matter of lessening the number of them and increasing the number of us. That has to be job one, in my humble opinion.
I agree. So my last question and thought, because I'm chapter president Duval for the Environmental Caucus, and
Yes, I do. And I saw you on the meeting Zoom. I finally did get on.
thank you. We've been having a conversation where the president has about this red, blue for green. In other words, Republicans and Democrats who are for the environment. And my president has been working on strategies trying to embrace Republicans who are tired of stuff going on in their party that they did not sign up for or didn't think it would go to that extreme. Do you think, or what your perspective is for the Democratic Party embracing those Republicans, and is it safe to do so without being sabotaged and thrown under the bus come election time?
Hear you, and it's a great question. The straight up answer for me unequivocally is yes. So let's just deal with the reality that we are living under in Florida. Democrats are not going to win statewide without Republican and NPA support, period.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I mean, when I moved here in '08, we had 800,000 more registered Democrats in the state of Florida than Republicans and only had one statewide officer. Alex Sink was the comptroller, the CFO.
Yeah.
Well, how in the hell do we have 800,000 more registered voters and only one of the four primary statewide constitutional officers? Because Democrats don't vote. So Democratic candidates had better be talking to moderate Republicans and NPAs if they want to win. I'm not speaking against our party. I am simply being real. We have not served our candidates well. You know that.
Yes, 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 and
We
yes.
have not served our candidates well. Again, LJ Holloway didn't win because 33,000 vote difference between she and Aaron Bean, but 75,000 of her Democratic colleagues in U.S. Congressional District 4 in Duval County did not vote.
Exactly.
So that district's boundaries that were drawn by a Republican governor had nothing to do with that loss. It had everything to do with Democrats not turning out. So yes, they had better. And are there going to be some plants who are Republican? Of course there are. That's not even to be argued. But the issue is, but how many more non-plants are in there? People forget that one of the most robust Republican groups that supported Kamala Harris were Florida Republicans for Harris.
Wow.
And another group was the evangelicals for Harris. How many Democrats even bothered to follow them? I did. And when Kamala lost, they simply rebranded. They didn't go away. They are evangelicals for America. Their basic tenet is that Donald Trump ain't the second Messiah, based on scripture. Now they're trying to talk to their own people. They're not expecting black people to try to talk to white Republicans on the far Christian right. They're talking to them because they say, you need to listen. I'm a white Christian and I'm telling you, he ain't the second coming.
Wow.
Of course we need to. So let me just ask this question to your viewers. Who out there in the Democratic Party have reached out to try to find anybody who's in their county who was affiliated with the Florida Republicans for Kamala or the evangelicals for Harris in the state of Florida? Because if we aren't trying to find who they are, who are on our side or at least not on his side, then I think, again, it's a failed strategy if you aren't. But that's a long-winded response. The simple answer to your question, yes, candidates not only ought to, but must seek alliances with Republicans and NPAs. And your point, meaning your caucus, the environmental one, it's about the issue. What does your mantra say? It's think green, vote blue. So it's first the green. It's the issue, stupid. And then your action your subsequent action must then follow. So you want folks to vote blue, but it's because we support green, right? So
Exactly.
it, I think your president is doing it exactly right because we will win more support from NPAs and Republicans based on issues than we ever will on party ideology.
I totally agree. I totally
It's
agree.
about the issues.
Now,
It's
I want to stop, but I got to put this question in since you said that. What does the Duval, Northeast Florida Club and Caucuses, because you was talking about that coordination, that voting, and that outreach. How can the clubs and caucuses in Northeast Florida in the Democratic Party come together and do what you're suggesting so that way we're not overstretched thin and the same people are not burnt out or gaslit while others take a step back or reserve seat step back? How can what we need to be doing clubs and caucuses wise to coordinate and for those presidents who are reaching out to do that, why the non-responsiveness or the lack of engagement to do so?
I really don't know the answer to that latter, why it's not happening, but something that we can try and do to turn that around
Hmm.
is kind of in the mix. You know, we do have a DEC, Democratic Executive Committee, organizations committee. Well, I've been in communication with the current chair. As a matter of fact, he called me just a few nights ago, and we are going to do a better job in trying to reach out to pull in the representatives from the clubs and caucuses so that we can begin the task of doing exactly what you just said. I think that that can be accomplished a couple of ways. This weekend, today and tomorrow, with the FDP's work and with the Black Caucus, you know, because the Black Dems statewide are making calls to the Black folk. That was a coordinated effort and partnership between the Black Caucus and the DEC. Well, here in Duval, particularly with DWIN, Democratic Women's Information Network, our new first vice president for programs, who also chairs the GOTV committee. It's a double burden, but we got to do it. She has already worked with the FDP, and tomorrow, Saturday, 1:30 to 4:30 at the DEC office, we've asked our members to come in and take part in the FDP structured action things. And the same with the Black Caucus folks are calling, you know, today and all. So we are trying to make sure that our caucuses are aware of the opportunities to collaborate. And then let's create even more. Democratic women, I can only speak for that because I am that region chair. And so I know what we're trying to do region wide.
Hmm.
And I believe others can do it. And we've suggested it. And that is, okay, if you have a Black Caucus, well, then look at your neighboring counties, Duval County Black Caucus, and see and meet with the ones, whether it's down in Flagler, St. John's has one, and they're in real good sync with their DEC. So, okay, Black Caucus Duval, link with St. John's, link with the newly established one over in Clay, and then again, use your common goals
Hmm.
to drive your common work. So you're
Yeah.
going to all be phone banking. Guess what? Why wouldn't you think of doing it um, on the same day, even if it's in different locations? Because with the dialers and the call in and you get with lists, your DECs can certainly put together area or geographic specific phone banks for you. So no one's overcalling, you know, anyone other. So you're not going to get a call 1 minute from the Black Caucus and another minute you're going to get a call from the Democratic women. You know,
Hmm.
we have to coordinate those things. And I know that's what DWIN tries to do. And we try to do it. We're trying to do it region wide. If we're going to be phone banking where we have overlapping, and again, in with Duval, Clay, and Nassau, in terms of Congressional District 4, we make sure that we limit our calling in Duval to the Duval folk, and Nassau and Clay will do theirs, unless they need some help.
Exactly.
Case in point, when we were pushing a few years back on vote by mail, and we were sending text messages, DWIN texted all of the folks in Nassau who had not re-upped for vote by mail. Why? Because we had the person power. And
That's
they don't
good.
have a women's club up there. They have liberal ladies who just had a wonderful lunch on Wednesday. But anyway, they didn't. They don't have a women's club, and so we said we'll do that. There's
That's
only a
good.
handful of them. We'll do that. And so, but the collective work region wide can bear fruit. So DWIN is trying to do it with our women groups, but we're also trying to just within Duval first, getting all of our clubs and caucus leadership to be on the same page. And then a part of that conversation that we will have with them is, and do your own due diligence to see what other counties in our area in Northeast Florida have a Black caucus or an Asian caucus or a Hispanic caucus, et cetera. Now I'm a yeah, I think I've re-upped with the Environmental Caucus. I'm not sure. I
Yes,
better check that. Oh,
yes,
I did. Okay.
yes, yes.
So I'm a paid member of 6, and I'm senior, women, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and environmental.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got to deal with the LGBT. Oh, that's right. I'm one of the 2 in our county. I can't remember which. I don't know if I know I follow Stonewall, but I think I'm a member of this newer one. I know I'm paid somewhere. But the point is, I try to always share my information broadly with individuals within all of the different areas where I do. I think if you were to ask anybody actively engaged with the Black Caucus or Hispanic Caucus or Asian Caucus, who do they hear from most? I think the common denominator would be Phillip Miner,
Yes.
because you got to take your stuff with you where you go. Because guess what? I think my ideas are the best ones out there. Okay. And so if I don't do anything, I'm going to tell you what I think. Okay. Now it's for you to decide whether it makes sense. Last point on your question, though, is because it is a sensitive idea to talk across party lines,
Mm-hmm.
I simply take a page out of Ronald Reagan's playbook. And this is what I say. And I have said it to my white female Democratic colleagues because, Trump couldn't get to the level of white female support in this country without some white females who are Democrats. Okay.
Right.
So the point is that you can trust, but verify. So
Exactly.
do your due diligence on any of these other folk, but you got to start with the fact that in the state of Florida, a
Mm-hmm.
Democrat, the chances of a Democrat winning on only Democratic votes is nil. It must be a coalition. And so we must have intentional conversations with people cross party lines. And once again, if we lead with the issues that are concerning folk, let's just look at the failure of the Republican Party in Florida to accept the Medicaid expansion before the
Yes.
cuts that the big, beautiful bill did. It was
Yes.
lousy then, it is lousier now. So
Yes.
that's not a Republican or Democratic issue. That's a your grandmama is hurt now.
Yeah.
Or your grandchild, even though it's with your daughter who you didn't like her husband or her baby's daddy, is off the road. SNAP
Yeah.
is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Your grandkids going hungry, okay?
Yeah. That's true.
Your insurance has quadrupled. So now, yeah, and you can't even get on eye care, okay?
Exactly.
It's issues, and those issues will draw us together. I'm not trying to ask them to let me move next door or me let them move next door to me. That's not required. Mom's Mabley said it best when she would go into white oriented restaurants in the South and people would look at her funny. She would say, I didn't come in here to go to school with you. I just came in for a hamburger.
I know that's
So
right.
let's just link on these issues and let some of that other stuff go. I don't need to live next door to you, you
I
know.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillip, for
My
this
pleasure.
candid, necessary conversation. Gave us a lot to take away and think about, and to challenge, our neighbors and on our block, and even in our households with our family members.
Absolutely.
It is
Absolutely.
very, very much important that there is no excuse this election. We got midterms coming up in August. Everybody needs to be voting in your house. And if you're not making sure of that, then it's on you.
Yes.
It's on
Absolutely.
you. Philip,
Yeah.
Mr. Phillip told us that we need to focus on voting according to the issues, not according to the party, where we live at, what side of town, what we drive. Those are aesthetics, personal things that does not impact voters and elections. It's the issues that we are selecting leaders that's going to fight for the issues for the people. That's who we need. So
Yep.
redistricting is very important. If you're not following, you need to get engaged in the community. So, Mr. Phillip, how can folks that's listening, whether they're in Duval or in Florida or beyond, where is the first place they need to go to get civically engaged in this upcoming midterms and general election?
I really think that they have to be clear on where they are. I mean, what state house district are you in? What city council district? What group are you in with school board? Because so many of us as registered voters, and I'm so thankful they're registered voters because they can't vote if they aren't registered. I'm very happy about that. But the level of knowledge of really where and who
Mhm.
represents you is it's sporadic, and we must change that. We need to know that you're in a school board one, because not that you can't help and work hard for somebody in a school district uh, group that's way across town because they may need the help, but you helping somebody over in school board group five, and you live in one, and you haven't tried to make sure that your candidate gets elected. Well, I think that's not the best use of your time. So know where you are and who represents you, because too often that unawareness, that absence of information, makes it very hard for you to really be effective in what you do. Who are you going to call and complain about? You gonna call a city council person that's not yours? They know that you're not theirs. They
Mhm.
know that. And so just that piece alone, start with your supervisor of election office and understand where you fit. Because if I had a nickel for every person who says, well, I don't know who my city council person is. And then
Wow.
certainly if you ask them, what about your at large? Who's your at large person? Well, if you're not sure who your own city council person is and or the at large, well, then at some point when you go to vote, I can understand your frustration saying, I don't know what to do, so I ain't going to do anything. Well, I'm sorry. Not voting means that the incumbent gets the advantage. And more often than not more, in this county, that incumbent is generally not going to be in your party.
Exactly.
Okay, so you are leaving the so-called enemy or the oppressor, whatever term people want to assign to the parties. I don't necessarily like those, but it works for me now because the party is not for us. That
Mhm.
Republican Party, it just isn't. And so if you happen to be in one of their candidates area and you don't know it and you say, well, because I don't know, I'm just not going to vote, that's a vote for continuing the oppressive or negative impact that's happening to you. You're simply perpetuating it by not knowing. At least you should know. So start at supervisor of election and know who your people are: state rep, state senator, city council, district, city council at large group, school board, at a minimum.
That's
Those
good.
five you need to know. And I would ask ever so humbly, but most sincerely, consider getting involved with your precinct,
Mhm.
because there's more people in your precinct who think like you than you would would even know. So the second place would be touching base with the Democratic Party so you can learn who your precinct committee person is and or who your voting district chair is, because you ought to know who those two individuals are, because they can be a resource to you. But as importantly, you can be a resource to them and ultimately help change the makeup of our representative government here in Duval, and it needs it. And final point, if we don't get at least 10 seats, the Democratic Party, next year in our municipal elections,
Mhm.
then come 2031, the redistricting process will once again be led by a party that is not favorably inclined toward. They say it's about Democrats, not about black people. Well, in this county, Democrats are black people, because 55+% of the registered Democrats in Duval County are black, and the majority of them are black women.
Yep.
And so anything that is done that will bring harm to the Democratic Party in Duval brings harm to Black women, who are disproportionately shouldering the burden of it all for their families and therefore for our culture and community. So you can see the negative compounding that happens
Mm.
when Black women are negatively affected. The whole community does. And then here in Duval, the whole county is.
Exactly. That is so true, Mr. Phillip. And final point, everyone, redistricting determines how much tax dollars go into your community. So that's
Hello.
another reason why we need to vote and be educated with redistricting, because whoever controls the redistricting controls where the money goes and where we live at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you
Always
so.
good talking with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillip Miner. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, how do they do so?
Well, probably the easiest is to just well, they can find me on Facebook, Phillip W. Miner. That might be the easiest because I try to be present,
Yeah.
there. That might be the easiest. But the other is, I think if they Google me or whatever, they'll get an email and all of that. But I'd say start with my Facebook page because that's probably the best way and the quickest way, and all. But if they dare, they can certainly, if they know their way around some of the political databases, like Van, look me up on Van. My phone number's in there.